Afternoon. I hope I've done it right anyway. It's the first time I've done anything like this. So thanks for joining us. Today's been amazing, hasn't it? Really, when you think about it, in such a short space of time to bring that many people together, it's incredible, really. Well, first of all, we've got quite a lot to get through. Really, we have an hour. The things we're going to cover, there's, like I say, there's a fair amount. Usually, some of it would be covered. I mean, I covered it well over kind of 2 or 3 days, especially the stuff towards the tail end. But what I've tried to do is bring as much together as I can and squeeze quite a lot in, really. Apologies, I'm a little bit nervous, like I say. I've done many presentations before, but not live when there's not an audience, so it's a bit strange. But thank you very much. So firstly, big thank you to Liam. She's a community hero, a leader. I've said it quite a bit on social media this past week. She's shown the way for us all. She's been able to pull this together in such a short space of time just by being caring, compassionate, using creativity, technology and the resources available to her, really. Just shows me that if people unite and show some care and, like I say, compassion for the community, then we can, events like these are possible and we can move mountains. So sorry, quickly, if you see me kind of referring here, it's because we have got quite a lot to get through and I have got kind of some notes in front of us, so apologies. A little bit about me, I'm Matty. Typical council estate kind of background, really. That's where I'm from, Everton originally, live in Dovecot now. I remember being surrounded by lots of resilient, hard-working people who are capable of achieving great things. Many of them have achieved great things, and many of them have achieved great things in the context of their lives and how they've defined it. However, but in some ways, kind of hindered by some of the social things that went on, some of their beliefs that limited them, and some opportunities that just didn't come their way, or if it did come their way, they weren't in a position to be able to take them, unfortunately. But lots of people, lovely people, salt of the earth. Work-wise, I'm a mental health nurse by background. I've worked right across the country in a variety of settings. Led mental health services, specialist services, right from the northeast of the country, right down to Cambridge and across Yorkshire and everything else. Now I'm back in the northwest and I'm loving it, really. Lots of the people I've worked with have either been in socially deprived areas or been from socially deprived areas. So many of the risk factors that come together to create poor mental health are common, actually, to things like, we noticed them right across settings like prisons, secure hospitals, so on and so forth. So this is really a whole community approach. I run an organisation now called the First Person Project. We are a not-profit, we're based in Liverpool. Like I say, we're a social enterprise, which means that every penny we get surplus would be reinvested into the community in a range of ways. What we do is we provide workshops, working with individuals, working with communities, groups of people where we can. Obviously lockdown and COVID has affected that. We work within them to improve mental health. Our view is that if you can improve mental health and the risk factors that influence mental health, then you can use that improved mental health as a positive factor behind progressive social change, improving a lot of things. We do that in a range of ways. But if anyone wants to talk to me about that, give us a shout and we can talk more. Just a quick overview. We're going to talk about mental health awareness. Mental health awareness is fundamental. It's important as a base, as a foundation. But it's important that we progress beyond it, really, to a state of action, to doing things. Awareness on its own is just information. But it is fundamental. I don't want to kind of underplay how important awareness is. One of the ways we do that and the way we put these things in action is by questioning things, developing our own critical skills. It's important that any definitions we see or hear today, that we flip them back onto ourselves and we kind of account for our own personal meaning of what's going on. That's really important. These things are general approaches, but ultimately we steer our own ship, so it's up to us to define our own health, well-being, limitations, aims, wishes, all of these things, ambitions, capabilities, really is what I'm saying. There will be opportunities throughout, really, to develop your critical thinking through some activities. Obviously, because of the way we're doing this today, we can't do it kind of in a group setting or the way you usually would. But what I'd ask you to do is either note them down or play this back a bit later on, or Just kind of just do it as we're going, and I'll actually just mentally think through some things. We're going to explore the concept of mental health, looking at some standard definitions and kind of pick that apart a bit. We're going to look at the idea of mental well-being. We're going to look at what good mental health looks like, and we again break this down. We're going to look at the key components of mental well-being. I mean, why do we even need good mental health? Why is it important? We're going to look at the relationship between mental health and mental ill health, or mental illness, or mental distress, or however you define it. We're going to look briefly at the types of mental illness you may be aware of, and that may, by the time we get to that, it'll make sense why we're not going to look at that briefly. Really, it's much more important to look around the situation, because an illness on its own just doesn't define a person. That wouldn't be the same in any other form of health or wellness. So why should something like depression, schizophrenia, whatever that might be, define a person? It shouldn't. There's so much more than the label that's been given to them. We're going to look briefly at helping a person who's suicidal. At the end of the day, First Person Project are part of the community who stand by the statement that all suicides are preventable, every single one of them. Every suicide is a tragedy, so it's on us as a community, as people, not professionals, as a community, to prevent this, because we can do it, because the skills available to us are the skills that we need to do that. You don't need any huge professional, experience, qualification, or anything like that. It really is just about connecting with people. We're going to look at how you can support people who need your help. We're going to look at how you can look after your own mental health, and explore some ideas and suggestions. But again, as I've just referred to before, you will develop your own self-care routine. That's what I would advise all the time. It's individual. It's whatever suits you. We're then going to look briefly again at socially progressive mental health, which is our thing at the First Person Project. Why is it and why it's important? When I introduce this, I'm certain you will understand and be aware of this already. But we put a label to it and we explain why we do that. And finally, some suggestions on where you can get some support if you need it. Okay, really quickly then. So if I say physical health to you guys, consider what you would automatically think of. So physical health, what do you think of? Okay, so now if I say mental health, consider what you'd automatically think of. Can you see the difference? So obviously this won't apply to everybody, but for some people, we tend to define physical health in more positive ways. So we'll say things like healthy eating, exercise, going to the gym, new year, new me, all this type of stuff. With mental health, we try to focus on the negative. We tend to focus on the negative, sorry. We'll describe mental illness before. So I say mental health, most people give me a mental illness. So they'll say things like depressed, anxious, worried, stressed. No one ever tells you the things like, when I say physical health, you might start going to the gym. No one ever says, yoga, to improve the mental health. No one ever talks about the positive. It's always in the negative context. Sorry, I'm generalising. For some people, it's always in the negative context. It's important to clearly define for yourself your meaning. If you can't understand what illness is in your world, in your context, then how do you even begin to understand what health is? Our mental health is dynamic, it's interchangeable, and it's not a case of being healthy or ill. It's not like a switch. We aren't one or the other. Whatever labels are assigned to us don't define us. I'll say that about 50 times throughout this because it's so important that we take that on. We all have mental health. Everybody's experience is unique and individual, and it's important to reflect upon this. I'll say that again, about, 10 times. So just some brief definitions. Good mental health means being generally able to think, feel and react in the ways that you need to and the way you want to in order to live your life. Poor mental health can feel just as bad as physical illness or even worse. Other definitions include the emotional and spiritual resilience, which allows us to enjoy life, survive pain, disappointment, sadness. It's a positive sense of well-being and an underlying belief in our own dignity and worth, as well as that of other people. It's a state of well-being in which the individual realises his or her own capabilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. As you can see then, positive mental health is clearly much more than just being free of illness. So just getting back to what I was saying about it's not a switch, it's not kind of, on or off type of thing. Self-definition again is so important. So really quick then, again, just on your own there, what do you think good mental health means? It's important that that's your view and it's not the view that you've just been influenced, kind of me pushing it on you. I've been doing this 15 years. I've never met two people the same. I've worked everywhere, I'll be honest. I've never met two people the same, and I am aware of mental health problems and mental health as a concept, but I'm still learning every day. So what I'd say to you is don't take what I'm saying as read, come to your own conclusion on this. So what do you think it means? It's your mental health after all, it's not mine. So what's good mental health look like? If you have good mental well-being, then you're able to think in more healthy ways. Again, sorry. Health and healthy are very much terms that you should critique yourself and pick apart and figure out what that means to you. But I'll just be general because I'm talking obviously to a few people here. So good mental health and well-being means that you think in a healthy way. You recognise the good in yourself, your positive attributes and the achievements you've made. You give yourself a pat on the back and you say, I've done a good job today, I feel proud of myself. You have a strong understanding of your emotions. You feel and express a range of emotions, understanding them for yourself, but also understanding the emotions of other people and how they impact and how they kind of work in tandem, if you like. We call this emotional intelligence. You might have heard that bandied around. It's becoming more and more popular, and it's good that people are wrapping their around these things because it's progressive and it's more awareness and action is the way forward, isn't it? Good mental health looks like someone who's got a healthy perception of themselves and the world around them. They engage with the world around them, engage with nature, engage in current affairs, politics, COVID, things like that. But you're able to critically reflect upon these things and not just be influenced by the things that are around you. Social media is a big one. Things like this, a perfect example how it's unbelievable and bringing people together. But actually, the flip side of that is that it can be really negative and influencing in the wrong way. Our job is to guard against that for ourselves and our loved ones. Good mental health also looks like somebody who can cope with the stresses and strains of daily life through times of high stress, distress, change, uncertainty, and the difficulties that we can face. What makes up good mental well-being then? So good mental health is influenced by a complex and intertwining range of factors. It's important here that we take a holistic view, considering the whole person and the circumstances. Some of the sessions today actually have been really good examples of that, coming at it from numerous different angles. Physical, the joy that you feel when you see a kid smiling and they're happy, that's influential in your mental health also. Spirituality, that's a key one, things like yoga and things like that. So today, whether by accident or design, I don't know, Leanne, but all credit to you, you've pulled together a really holistic day. I suspect it's completely deliberate and like I say, all power to you. There's a link for some mental illnesses, although this is hotly contested and debated, there's a link towards genetic susceptibility. So your genes influence what's going on. Again, the evidence is up in the air on that, but there is a link there. Learned behaviours is a big one as well, what we learn by those around us. Childhood experiences, growing up and whatnot, school, bullying, things like that. Difficult life events, trauma, adversity, complex challenges. Of course, there's other trauma that can happen, beyond childhood, and it can happen at any point during life. Individual ability to cope. Sometimes you'll see that called resilience. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Resilience to me sounds a bit like Cuprinol, something that you paint your shed with or something, but I much prefer individual ability to cope than resilience. But again, people are only trying to help, and when they use the word resilience, it's not to be criticised necessarily. It's just my personal view. Spiritual outlook and openness, again, swinging back to today's sessions. Employment, financial security, adequate housing, access to appropriate healthcare. These are all things that make up your mental well-being. Also, community and social support. If you think about the kind of last 4 or 5 things I've just mentioned, employment, social security, adequate housing, access to appropriate healthcare, these are all things which link right in with people's community and the social support. This is very little to do with someone's biology or someone's genes or something like that. These are things which are around us and what we're in, but we can also influence, and that's the key bit, and we will move on to that in a bit. Other socio-economic factors, really: crime, poverty, politics. And right now, like I've just alluded to before, COVID-19 and the associated issues with that, isolation being the biggest one, really. I think lots of people are feeling it at the minute. Key point I think on that is mental health and poor mental health existed prior to COVID. It's good that if we can take some positive out of COVID, it's good that people's awareness has been raised around things like social isolation and the impact that it can have on your mental health. But it's so important that when we get back to normal, and we will get back to normal, when we get back to normal, those who felt the pinch now and felt the strain now, don't forget that there's people living before COVID and will live after COVID. In social isolation is their day to day. It's got nothing to do with a global pandemic. So please be mindful of that. You know, it's not going to go away just because it goes away from your world. And that's, again, not being critical of anybody. It's just a point to take away, really. And if I'm honest with you, this is something we see on a daily basis, working, like I say, in a professional capacity with people with mental illnesses. Why do we need good mental health anyway? Why is it important? Well, it's essential for our ability to communicate. It's essential for our ability to learn, to form and maintain good relationships with people, and to cope with changes and difficulties in our life. Not so long ago, 2018, me and my family were hit by something huge. My mum died. She died really quickly from an unavoidable illness, COVID. And I'm sat here on Instagram Live, and I've got absolutely no hesitation or shame or anything like that to say it took the legs from underneath me. And I had all this awareness in the world, and I had all this knowledge and experience and everything else, all the things that we think will be enough. But underneath all that, unravel it, I'm a human being, I'm a person, and my mum died. It wiped me out, man, for about 7 months. And through a combination of medication and counselling, I'm flying. I'm doing well. I'm happy now. I don't get upset by it. Miss it every day, of course I do. But I'm not broken anymore. I'm not broken anymore. So it helps out there. It's cool. It's accessible, and we should access it if we can, if we know where to do it. Like I say, hopefully we can go some way today to showing people that help is available. Our mental health is a strong and powerful influence upon our physical health and vice versa. Other reasons why we need mental health is it helps us to attend school, college, work, whatever that might be. It helps us to look after ourselves and each other. It helps us get good sleep. It helps us to laugh. It helps us to cry. And you know what, like, crying is just as equal an emotion. You know, it's not a lesser emotion, it's not a less masculine emotion, and not a more of a feminine emotion. And actually nowadays in society, we have people who don't define themselves in them ways anyway. You know, they're allowed to cry as well. Everyone's allowed to cry. So, you know, get your Ben and Jerry's out, get the notebook on, and have a good cry. My advice to you, professionally endorsed. Yeah, I'm sat in a room laughing at myself. So, no. We need good mental health. It impacts upon our eating, our diet, our choices. Shout out to Leanne there with the healthy meal prep and things. Helps us to deal with loss. Helps us to deal with what other people think about us, because that's massive. How much baggage do we carry around because we're concerned by what people think about us? I mean, does it matter? Does it matter? Like, you know, to some people it does, and at their journey it matters to them. But you know, good mental health can help us navigate them rocky waters, and it generally helps us to manage our negative feelings. Okay. Another self-reflection moment. I'm just going to have a little go on my water before I say it. So do us a favour, please, and just to yourself, think of the things that good mental health enables you to do, and if you find it difficult, then flip it. Imagine the things that you would or wouldn't be able to do if you had a mental health problem. Just to yourself. Like I say, you can watch it back a bit later on or whatever, and you'll have a little think about it. But it's so important that these things, you're not just taking it in one ear and going out the other. It's so important. There's loads of effort gone into today, and like I say, I'll keep drawing on my experience because I think that's the most useful thing to do. It's so important that you critically reflect on you, and then yours, and then your community, rather than kind of paying too much attention to general definitions and trying to fit yourself into that. Define you, do you. Sometimes it's helpful to think about mental health and mental illness on a continuum. So mental illness one end, mental health on the other. Like I mentioned before, we all have mental health, but some of us can have mental health problems. We're all vulnerable though, and it can hit us all, and again we'll cover that. If you think about it on a continuum, then sometimes we can be more towards the mentally healthy side, and sometimes we can be more towards the mental illness side. This can happen we can flip between. It can happen multiple times a day, weekly, monthly. It really doesn't matter. And what that shows when you think about it that way is that this isn't on off. This isn't like I've got mental illness, I haven't. This is human first, person, citizen, family, dad, mum, however you define yourself first. And then these things that affect all that, you can be more to one way or the other. Okay. It's important to note that having a mental health problem doesn't mean that somebody can't have good mental health. So again, it doesn't define you. So if you have a mental health problem, let's use depression, you aren't always depressed. If you have cancer, you can have treatment and enter remission. You don't have cancer no more. If you have a toothache, however you treat toothache, painkillers, whatever you might do, clove oil, pull it out, Reiki, some people use that. You don't have a toothache no more, right? So if you experience depression, why are you always depressed? Why are you a depressive? Okay, you aren't. It's just the narrative. So you have to flip that and change that. But equally, somebody without a mental health problem can experience what looks like typically mental illness. They can have a bad day. They can have a bad week. They can, it doesn't mean that everything's going to change for them and all of a sudden they're going to need to go to a mental health hospital or something like that, or even need professional help. It's very, very real, and it's very, very, it can happen to us all. So let's not forget that. Mental ill health doesn't discriminate. Regardless of background, it can happen to anybody. And in my professional life, I've worked with the average Joe or Joanne, kind of the everyday person. I've worked with high court judges, celebrities, footballers. It really doesn't matter. People are people first, and all these other little things that we tag on, these little bits and bobs that define us. That don't define us, but we think they define us. These things don't prevent us from developing vulnerabilities and susceptibilities to something that's very, very real and can be distressing and life-changing. So what are mental health problems? They can affect any of us, like I've just mentioned, irrespective of age, personality or background. They include a wide range of experiences and can affect the way you think, feel and behave. They can appear as a result of experiences, both within our personal and working lives, or they can come around without any easily identifiable cause. Everybody's always asking why. Why have I developed this? What's the reason? Let's look at a solution-focused way and let's try and deal with what's going on and prevent it from happening again. However, some people want to know the why because it's important for closure and stuff, but you can work on that as time progresses. It's important that you don't stress yourself out too much and become entwined in this idea trying to find out why, because it's a virtually impossible task. Some people might have mild to moderate issues, and some people it might take on a more severe form. It can affect the person's ability to cope with day-to-day living. Most of the problems that you see, what people define as symptoms, will affect very real, normal parts of everyday life. Ability to look after yourself, cooking, washing, cleaning, doing your laundry, taking the kids to school, all of these things. So don't judge, don't perpetuate the stigma, don't be part of the problem. Be mindful of other people's lives and be more for them instead of yourself. The world will be a better place. Please. Experiencing a mental health problem is obviously upsetting, it's confusing, it's frightening. Particularly at first, you feel like, some things I hear all the time is you feel like you're going off your head. Not my words. Other people's, you feel like you're losing your mind. These fears are often kind of reinforced by negative opinions on the telly, on the internet, social media, whatever it might be, where people take limited knowledge and try and apply it generally. And then people who are maybe less sure of themselves or assertive or emotionally intelligent or just at a different part of their journey, they're really vulnerable and they'll take these opinions on and then they'll use it as a big stick to beat themselves with. So it's going to increase your distress and sense of isolation. So where's the sense in that? But equally, like I mentioned earlier, on social media and certain parts of the media can actually do a good job. So credit where it's due. Today is a fine example. In reality, most mental health problems are common. Well, in fact, all mental health problems are an extreme variation of normal human experience. Most people know someone who's experienced the problem, and basically, when you apply your own definition and your own sense of the situation with your own self-care routine, whatever works for you, community, the people around you, when you combine these things, you'll feel better and you'll move in the right direction. And I can promise you I can say that without with full surety. I can promise you that. Types of mental health problems then. I'm just going to briefly whiz through this, to be honest, because I think we all know some of the types, but there's lots of them. Some of them have similar symptoms, so there's lots of crossover. There's lots of criticism in the research in the world today, really. For the past 50 years, really, about mental illnesses. Do they exist? Mental health problems. Should we be defining them? Should we be giving them a label? All this type of stuff. Rather than worrying about the label so much, just rest assured that the things that you see in somebody that we define as a mental illness, they exist. So the different symptoms, the different components, the different problems that people have in life, they exist, okay? So don't worry so much about the label. Just looking at the label for a minute, there's lots of crossover between lots of different symptoms which would sit in each of the mental illnesses, each of the diagnoses. You might not have a particular diagnosis, but you can still experience the problems, so don't think that your problem's any less of an issue. There's somebody out there always to talk to, and somebody out there always to help you navigate these, like I say, these rocky waters. I'll always take you serious, and I'm sure everybody logging in today has got a vested interest in mental health, otherwise they wouldn't be here. I'm sure they'll help, so surely somebody knows somebody else, so reach out, talk. It's the simple things. Like I say, the common mental illnesses: depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar affective disorder. We have a category called personality disorders. I'm not going to list them all. I don't really see the purpose. We all know them, but they exist. In some cultures, actually, they don't have definitions for mental. In some cultures, they don't have a definition for things that we actually call mental illnesses. But the problems still exist. They just don't badge them up. In other cultures, they do have, like our culture, for example, we do have definitions, but sometimes they're not always applied consistently. So, Billy in number 42 could have schizophrenia, whereas, Veronica in number 43 could have bipolar affective disorder, and it presents in exactly the same way. So to yourself, consider why that might be, and then when you're considering why it might be, consider what issues it might cause, and does it help the situation or does it hinder the situation? Consider if there's anything you can do about it. Consider, do you have more power than you realise? If I was a better man, which I'm not, but if I was, I'd stick a tenner on that you can do a lot more than you realise. And it's not that you're not doing anything because you're lazy or anything like that, or you don't care. It's more maybe you're lacking confidence and you don't realise that you can. Okay, but I'm going to show you that you can. It's important to be critically reflective, just to kind of join the dots again from the beginning of the presentation. We're not talking about names and labels here, we're talking about human beings. Human beings, okay? Not labels, not badges, not COVID-19, not, do you know what, right, while I'm on, not Tories, and not, I won't say it, but NONCESs, right? That's everyone's favourite word at the minute, isn't it? Right, just lay off, you're badging people up and you're defining people. On one hand, we're saying, don't let things define us, and we're in it together, and it's okay not to be okay, and all these things, and then we're using people's political allegiance and things like that as a stick to beat them with. Don't do that. It's just not helpful at all. Look at the person first, and then start from there and go from there. All the other bits and bobs, it really doesn't matter. No, it really doesn't. Just going to talk a little bit about suicide now. Suicide's it was a pandemic before it was a pandemic, before we knew what pandemic meant, in many ways, to be fair. They can affect anyone, suicidal feelings. I'll just reiterate what I said earlier on. Suicide is preventable. Every single suicide is preventable. Unfortunately, in my career, it's come with the territory a little bit. That I've worked with people who took their own life. I've known of people, found people, of having been able to resuscitate certain people. And this is not about blame or a culture of blame or saying it's your fault or your fault. It's not. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. Every single suicide is preventable. That's it. It can happen to anyone. It can affect any gender, race, age, background, any time. The person might not know what's caused it. It caused them to feel the way they do prior to ending their own life. But it's often a combination of factors that's come together. Everyone's experience of suicide and suicidal feelings is different. Experience, sorry, is different and unique to them. They may feel kind of, it might feel sometimes less that you want to, not that you want to die, just that you can't go on living the life you're living. It's different, but the outcome's the same, and the outcome's final, and it's tragic. So our job as people, as humans, as people who are connected with each other, is to figure out and help that person decipher what's going on and help them before they do that final act, because there's no coming back from that. The feelings that the person's experienced might build over time. They might fluctuate from moment to moment. They might not understand why they feel that way. It might look strange to people on the outside, but don't judge. Just be there for the person. They might feel there's nowhere to turn. So if someone you know, or even yourself, is suicidal, let me assure you there's always help available. There's huge help available. And do you know what, right? This part of the world is incredible. Like this part of our little bubble here in Liverpool and the surrounding areas, to be fair, there's so much going on of people who care. And just so people know, Merseycare is our local NHS trust, and they made a commitment not so long ago, and they have a zero suicide policy. Anybody that ends their own life on their watch, on their books, they see it as not only a tragedy, which of course it is, but they see it as a failure on their part. That's one suicide. Now, I know that's the way we should be aiming, of course it is, but what a brave and bold move from that service. And that's on our doorstep. That's the service that's available to you. So don't lose sight of that, okay? We're in a very special place. Suicidal feelings can range from being preoccupied by abstract thoughts about ending your life, flashing into your head, you're not sure what's going on, you can't make sense of it, feeling that people would be better off without you. You might think about methods of suicide, make some clear plans to end your life. You might be scared or confused, obviously, by these feelings, questioning your own mortality. But you're not alone. You're not. There's lots of people have these feelings and thoughts. It's quite common. Sadly, it's quite common, but it is quite common. You're not alone. It's okay not to be okay. And talk about it. And if you can't talk about it, it's on us, who maybe aren't having these suicidal feelings, to be aware of these things, be kind of encouraging people to talking to people, support them, do practical things. How can I help somebody who's feeling suicidal? You can, there's lots of practical things you can do, but try not to judge. If somebody is thinking about taking their own life, it's understandable to feel shocked, frightened, angry, but don't judge them, don't blame them, don't guilt trip them. That's not useful. Don't do that. Nothing you say to them is going to make anything worse. Talk about it with them. You're not going to put the idea in the head, and you're not going to encourage them to do it. I understand why people come to that conclusion, but you're not. If you're full and frank with somebody about it and candid, that gives them the confidence that you understand them, you're not judging them, and you're there to help them. That's enough to move the conversation and move the action forward, isn't it? And take them further away from whatever it is they're thinking about doing to themselves. Just be prepared to listen, supportive. That's the first step to take. Talk to the person. If you think they're suicidal, just be there to listen, actively listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. So just listen to them, listen to what they're saying. Encourage them to talk about the feelings. Don't feel under pressure to say the right thing. There is no right thing to say. I keep talking on my own experience. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been on, involved in a lot of this type of thing, and there's no right or wrong thing to say. Be human, fundamentally human. You need no qualifications for that. You just need to be born. Just be human. As long as you're helping that person feel less isolated and frightened, then the conversation can start and build. Okay? Encourage them to get help. There's loads of help out there, loads and loads. But you know what? Ask them what can help. Ask them. It's not about a magic wand. It's not about a magic pill or a magic service or whatever. Often people come to professional services like what I work in now, what I've worked in previously when I've worked in the NHS. And we talk to people. Okay, we've got experience, fair enough, but we don't have any special qualifications. We really don't. We might be qualified nurses, doctors, whatever it might be. But actually, the conversation we're having at that point doesn't really involve them skills, if I'm honest. It involves humanistic skills, empathy, genuineness, always regarding the person in a positive way. Always valuing what they're saying, listening to them, reflecting back to them what you just heard, and then trying to be positive and practical with them, helping them, help like you would anything else. Although obviously it's really, really serious. Okay. They might have a support plan that they want to write together. They might have like really practical support they can put in place. I don't have a bed for the night. Give them a bed, find them a bed. I don't know how to pay my bills. I don't know the council on my back over my council tax. Let's do something about it. There's agencies everywhere to do something. And can you imagine if somebody was to take their own life on the back of a really fixable, practical issue? I mean, that's even more tragic than if it happened anyway. I mean, it's awful, isn't it? Help them to think about positive experiences. Positive things, things in their life that make them smile, especially if you know the person and you've got the benefit of this experience and you can share that with them. And then sometimes, unfortunately, when somebody's having these things, when somebody's having these experiences, unfortunately, if somebody, actually tries to end their own life or is having plans to do it, then the statistics show us that in future they're more likely to do that. Not always, but more likely. So that means that you can take this opportunity as a time to learn from what's going on, learn from, what triggered it this time, what were the things that fell, the kind of dominoes lining up type of thing, and then what tipped them over, what was the straw that broke the camel's back. Learn for these things, and then in future, you can prevent the person getting to that point again. Generally, how you can support somebody with their mental health problems. So I'm just checking the time. Generally, how can you support somebody who needs your help? Show your support. I think we've touched on that quite a bit. Be genuine. Listen to them. Don't be afraid to ask how somebody is. Fortunately now, people are getting a bit better at talking about it, which is great. And there's wonderful people who are pulling things together and community events and different things, and kind of normalising the conversation, which is brilliant. If you let them know that you have noticed that they're not quite right, and I'm talking generally now, not necessarily just about suicide, generally. If you let them know that, then the person's going to feel less awkward. They're going to feel more trustful of you and more willing to talk. So that's good, and kind of you're showing that you care and you understand what they're going through. Again, ask how you can help. People's illness and label doesn't define them. So there's lots of strengths that these people have within them, inherently within them, that they usually draw upon, but maybe they don't have the strength or the presence of mind or the ability at the minute, the capability to draw upon these things, but you know what they are, or you can ask if the person knows what they are and do them things. And it's usually simple things like playing with the dog, or like I say, seeing a kid smile, or that type of thing. If a colleague wants to do more exercise, then you can help them. Things like that. It's usually practical things, but the conversation needs to start somewhere. Be open-minded. Please don't use phrases like cheer up or pull yourself together or I'm sure it'll pass or things will be okay or all that type of stuff. It won't help. I suppose things will be okay. It's reassuring, I suppose, but I'm sure it'll pass, and it's quite, you're minimising what's going on for the person, you're invalidating what's going on for them, and that's only going to lead to more feelings of kind of inferiority, or even worse, guilt, that they're feeling the way they are, which is, it's not going to, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, it's going to make things worse all round, isn't it? But often the person who's experiencing the problem will often know what's best for them. Don't just talk about mental health with them, like I say, it doesn't define the person. Just to go back to my time when I spent time with a counsellor, I went and seen him for 10 weeks. I mean, we spoke more about football. I won't say which team, but we spoke more about football and politics and socialism and joking and messing around and stupid TV programmes that used to be on and all that. We didn't really speak about my mum or whatever. 10 sessions and it was sound. So don't always speak about mental health with them. You don't have to. It'll only make the conversation awkward anyway. Rest assured, you've got the skills within you. Trust me, you have. And like I say, it's only part of the person, this experience. It's not them completely. So just keep that in mind when you're working with people or when you're supporting people generally. Show them trust and respect. That goes without saying. Be mindful of the fact that their self-esteem is probably in the boots. So they probably feel a bit worthless. So show some compassion towards that. It's important to look after yourself as well, though, and we will touch on some ways to do that, but just be mindful that sometimes people can take too much of you up, and then at the end of the day, if your glass is empty, how are you supposed to fill anybody else's up? It is important to maintain your own well-being. Again, be patient with the person. It's, you know, you might want to help immediately, but you've got to take a longer term perspective with the person. They might not be willing or able to help right now, but they will be able to help in time, or accept help in time. So just be there for them in that time. And if they can work immediately, then do it. But if they can't, just be patient. Be patient with them. Ultimately, though, don't lose interest. You know that they're there, know that they need support. There's lots of ways to look after your own well-being. You know, I'll just maybe reiterate some of the things that have been said today. But what a day really to try and make this point. Keep physically active. You know, it goes without saying. Identify your mood triggers. Doing things like this, thinking critically about your own situation and the situation of your loved ones and things like that with them will help you identify what's going on for you. Hopefully preventing progression into mental ill health or stress or periods of distress. Get sleep. I call it fundamental. It's a fundamental. People call it a basic. People overlook it. It's fundamental. Get enough sleep. Get enough sleep. I used to stay up all night. I'm in bed by like 10:30 these days, and I'm made up because, you know, get enough sleep. Promise me. I promise you. Sorry. Relax. It's important to make time to relax. However that looks to you. Like I say, some people meditate and do yoga and stuff like that, but be mindful of that. Watch your diet, you know, supplementation and things like that, but also just your fundamentals, your fruits, your veggies and things like that. I won't go too much into it because I'll be honest, I'm not a total expert on it, but there's guys here, you know, across the day, Lee and myself, who are far more qualified than me to talk about that, but it is a huge factor. Accept yourself and all your flaws, you know, accept it. And then you can start to move on. Things like self-help books, assertiveness skills, spending time with other like-minded, positive, proactive and supportive people. Say that when you're drunk. Don't compare yourself with other people, it's pointless. Learn to identify and challenge unhelpful thinking patterns. Engage in the hobbies you enjoy. Don't lose sight of the things that you enjoy. Don't do that. You know, force yourself to do it. Be realistic as well. You don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't. Nobody is anyway. You know, there's lots of people on social media that lie or embellish the truth. Embellish. Right, I'm going to talk now. I just double check the time. So we've got 19 minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about something called socially progressive mental health. Right, let me find it. Okay. Socially progressive mental health is what we at the First Person Project do. Socially progressive mental health, as the name suggests, it's a way of using or improving mental health as the kind of key factor in improving society and making society move forward. Now, there's lots of things out there to help people with mental health problems, but we focus on the strengths and not the deficits. We focus upon health and not illness. That's not to say we don't work with people who have both, but obviously my presentation up to now, my session up to now, you've probably got where I come from and my philosophy on these types of things. And we focus very much on what's strong versus what's wrong. Mental health and mental illness, when you think about it, is as much a social, political and financial problem as it is biological and you know, chemical. So why then, when we're feeling the way we do, is the GP often the first person we go to for usually, and I'm not being critical of GPs here, but usually for a chemical solution, a tablet, whatever that may be, or even why do we go to talking therapies and things like that? Again, I'm not being critical, and if you can get access to these things and it works for you, brilliant, do it. I'm just saying that if mental health and mental illness is a social and political and a financial issue, partly, then why are we trying to challenge it in very limited ways? Surely we need to open our mindset. Now, today we've described an idea of what good mental health looks like. And lots of these factors involve our relationships with ourselves and the people around us. We've explored the key components of mental health. Again, lots of these factors include our society and our local communities. We've looked briefly at mental illnesses. And when we think about the symptoms of these illnesses and you break them down, many of them are linked to our relationships and how we function in the world. Not really to do with biology or to do with something we can measure with an X-ray or a blood test or a CAT scan or whatever it might be. They're to do with our relationships and our functioning socially. We've also considered how each of our experiences are unique to us. How we experience health and illness is like I say, individual. It can change situation to situation. Therefore then, if we're serious about improving our mental health generally, then surely we should focus on how we can improve the elements of our communities and our social lives, as well as all of the other things that we do, like go to GP and go and see psychotherapists and counsellors and stuff. Not that I'm being critical, I'm just saying we should talk about the social approach as part of the bigger picture. Social approaches to mental health require people to take responsibility for what's going on, for their situation and for the situation around them in their local communities. A problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? According to the old saying, problem shared is a problem halved, and that makes sense. Can you imagine what we could achieve if each of us helped just one person every day, and then that person helped somebody every day, and then so on and so on and so on? How you define help is completely up to you and that person that you're helping, but can you imagine it? Can you imagine a world where we focus upon the strengths of ourselves and others instead of the weaknesses and deficits? And when we start conversations with people, we don't talk from a negative standpoint. We talk about the skills and the assets that people in communities have, rather than, and what's keeping them healthy, what's making them healthy. Let's talk about that, rather than crap in it, lad. Shit in it. We do this, don't we? If we focus upon what's strong rather than what's wrong within ourselves and our communities, could you imagine the possibilities? Independence, interdependence upon each other, ownership, empowerment, responsibility. There's improvements all around, isn't it? Our communities have within them a broad mix of people with skills and abilities and capabilities, capacities. Many of these people don't even know about them. You mightn't even know about them yourself. Just consider how many of you guys know your next door neighbour. How many of you know the name of your neighbour but one, or and then how many people know how many people have out of your local kind of street or whatever have skills that people don't know about. Do you know the skills of Ronnie who lives next door, or Karen who lives the other way? Do you know what assets they have? Do you even know what they do for a job? And if you could describe yourself using only your skills, then how would that sound? So you can't say anything about your problems or your height, weight, what you're interested in or whatever. Just talk about your skills. Then consider, is there anybody in your local community that could benefit from these skills? Think about the issues facing yourself and your local community. Think about the skills now that you've considered that you have, and that may be the skills that you're aware of that your community has and your neighbours. And then ask yourself, do you have any skills available to you and assets that could solve some of these local issues in your community? And then if you can, ask yourself another question. Why are these issues still happening if you've got the skills available to you? Could you take more responsibility for your situation rather than the usual thing? And I do this myself, go to council, the GP, blame Boris, whoever, right? We put on someone else, when in fact, if we reflect and we look at the skills we have inherently within ourselves and our communities, and, cleaning the street up, for example, making sure people are putting the bins out and not, putting bin bags everywhere and letting the rats get at them and stuff, people are more likely to pick up the phone and phone the council than they are to just have a little knock and say, do you need some help, or you're all right with that? Or if the grass is overgrown or whatever and there's maybe rats in and out the privets and things like that. Someone might have a lawnmower. Simple things. I know it sounds simple, but it's true. You can improve happiness, and there's so many variables of what you can improve. Can you imagine a world where we take action ourselves instead of wait for an outside agency like I've just described? And would we have as many issues in our community if we did take more responsibility? There's so much evidence underpinning this approach. There's we found improvements in employment, reduced crime, a better sense of well-being, cleaner neighbourhoods, less graffiti and vandalism, better access to health and social care services, increased empowerment, community ownership of assets, better park space, cleaner neighbourhoods. So let me ask, in a world like this then, if you can imagine it, would mental health be better or worse? Would you want to live in a community like that? Because if you want to, if we all pull together and work together, we can. It's not out of reach. And if we stand around waiting for somebody else to do it, then we're probably going to be waiting a long time. It's completely possible and realistic. The evidence shows above what I've just referred to. If anybody wants the actual evidence, you know, the references and stuff, I can provide it. But rest assured, it is available. And the key thing to remember is that this evidence was kind of conducted. This research was conducted in communities just like ours. So if invariably there's someone who says it can't be done because, you know, crime's through the roof in our community, whatever it might be. Actually, these things have been, you know, conducted. These scientific papers and research trials and things have been conducted in organisations just like ours. So it can be done. How do we create our abundant community? Again, just mindful of time, we're still okay. Apologise. How can we create our abundant community then? We start by asking three main things, okay? What assets are available to me? What can I do myself or within my community? What can I do within and with the help of my community? So you've got to ask first and reflect around what assets are available and do the critical thinking exercise I've just referred to in the past slide. Do I need some help? So the second thing is, do I need some help from outside agencies? If so, what do we need? Clearly define that. And then how do I arrange this? Put a time limit on it. Set someone a goal of doing it. Do you know what I mean? Don't just say, oh, that lamppost keeps breaking. It's been dark for months. Do you know, who's reported it? Who's done something about it? You know, ask these questions. It's only going to improve things. And then the third question is there anything that I can't do that outside agencies need to do because it's out of my control and influence? So this is not about undermining or demeaning outside agencies like the council or the health service or the police or whatever. It's not about demeaning them and undermining them. It's about moving them from the centre of what's going on and putting people and communities back in the centre where they started. That's all it's about. It's not about demeaning services, it's just about decentralising them and putting people back where they were. So just to reiterate then, creating awareness is fundamental of mental health and mental health problems. It's fundamental. But we have to progress beyond it into a state of action and ownership, our ownership. Otherwise, it's just knowledge. It's just knowledge. And some people will remember it and some people won't. And if we start by considering the previous 3 points I've just mentioned about creating an abundant community, then we begin the journey of awakening the power within our families and within our neighbourhoods. And if you need more convincing about this, please speak to me by all means, but if you need more convincing, just consider what you're doing now. You're sat, engaging in a free mental health day, set up by Leanne. She's a citizen, a community champion, she's a concerned neighbour, she's, you know, all of these things. She hasn't had a lot of resources to do it, not a lot of time, and she's done it because she had the ability, and she took responsibility for the community. So it works. So if you need any more evidence and convincing, just think about what you're doing now. You know, it works. This is huge. This is people helping people. Remember that. Like I mentioned there, if you need help to set up anything like this, give us a shout. You know, I'll have a chat with you by all means, and then we'll look at how we can do these things. This is what we do day to day, the First Person Project. So support then is widely available generally for all mental health issues, suicide-related problems and suicide prevention. I can speak to Leanne and send some stuff around. But you know, your big charities, your Minds, your Rethink, your Samaritans, there's an app and there's an online database from the Hub of Hope, which is something by an organisation called Chasing the Stigma. And download the app, it's great. You put your postcode in and it flashes up and tells you in your local area what's available to you. It's like magic, it's brilliant. It's like Just Eat, but for compassion and mental health support. It's brilliant. Our very own today as well, Lee Cooper Foundation, Lily and the team there, they have an online directory which is absolutely fantastic. If anyone tuned into that, you know, phenomenal auntie, you know, brilliant. Group of young people doing that, you know, it's inspirational, it's amazing. There's the Live Well directory which is available online. And like I say, I can send some stuff around generally about how to access help and different things if you want, if people still need it. But trust me, there's loads out there. You know, concerned organisations and people like myself, like Leanne, like other people I'm sure involved in this conversation, leave no stone unturned when it comes to providing support to people. But rest assured, just that last part of my session there, you know, the power very much sits within people and communities. Don't forget that. Don't forget it. It's where it starts and where it ends. Just so you're aware as well, over the next few weeks. So sorry, if you follow us on Facebook, First Person Project C.I.C. We're online as well, firstpersonprojectcic.co.uk. We're on Twitter, First Person C.I.C. You can find us dead easy. Find us through Leanne, whatever. We're not on Insta just yet, but that's something to be done. We're going to be followers, and we're going to be running a series of 5-day challenges over the next few weeks. And what these are again kind of private exercises which you can either share with social media or not, around a range of different 5-day challenges to improve self-esteem, confidence, your kind of ability to have gratitude and be grateful for what's going on, goal setting, these types of things. So we've got 5-day challenges set up. They're free. All we want is people to get involved, follow us, build our own community, and then everything we do as an organisation, like I say, non-profit, it's for the community. It's to generate this social and community action to make our backyard better. Okay, so get on me, and we'll go from there. Hope you've enjoyed it. I think I'm doing all right for time. Yeah, I've got 5 minutes left. Like I say, hope you've enjoyed it. And any questions, get on us. Leanne, again, just to finish, excellent, and best of luck thanks to everyone who's done today, and best of luck to everyone who's to come. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I don't know how to switch it off.